So let's just record here. So again, a very, very warm welcome to anybody who is going to be listening to the session this evening. It's always nice to have students listen and participate. And yeah, just always nice to be able to guide the students in this. So this is the NSS session for BMNG 6221. So it's for Business Management 2A. And what we're going to be focusing on is we are going to be focusing on task 2. So I know that we have already discussed this in detail as a class. So we're just going to recap, go over it once again, what is expected of you for this particular task, and then obviously allow you guys to ask any questions that you may have. So this task 2 counts 30 marks. It's a continuation of task 1. So you would have already received all your feedback or your results from task 1. And this one is then obviously sort of the continuation. You're going to build on from that idea. You're going to build on from it and add on as we go along. Part 2 is due on the 5th of October. So it's due on the 5th of October. So we've got, what does that make it? What, 2 weeks? Just more than 2 weeks to submit it. So you've got enough time to still work on it and to get a good task 2 done. So let's unpack it in more detail. The instructions tell us that you've identified the problem, you've identified sort of the solution to solve this problem, whether it be load shedding, potholes, high crime rates, the lack of education in South Africa. There were many different ideas and ideas that came up to try and solve or alleviate these problems in South Africa. So now that you have the idea, you use that same idea that you would have created for the task, and you're now going to identify whether this idea that you have is actually going to be a good business idea. Is it something that is going to be feasible? Is it something that could actually make you money? So this is kind of the next step. You've identified the idea. There were many ideas that you had and that you brainstormed. And now on this one idea that you have selected, we are going to try and analyze whether this idea is actually going to be feasible. Could it work within the environment that we want it to work in? And what are some of the economic conditions that you need to be aware of if you do indeed implement or go further with this idea? So it's divided up into 4 different questions, okay? So these questions there's a few big questions. The last question is our big question, and the first questions are a little bit smaller. But like I mentioned, just to reiterate here, it is a continuation of task 1. So the topic that you have chosen, the idea that you're using in task 1 is what you're going to be choosing in the POE and going forward as well. If there really is a problem and say, no, you really have to change, please just send me an email and just let me know that this is the situation so that I know, because obviously I've got a list of all the ideas now so that I can check, you know, how the ideas are developing and growing. So I also keep sort of like a progress scale of all the ideas. So please just let me know if your idea has for some reason changed. Obviously, that's not ideal, but if it has, like I say, please just let me know about that as well. Okay, so let's jump right into these questions that we would have then. The first one that we are going to be focusing on is this product that or service that you are that you have identified, does it meet the characteristics of being a good or successful product or services? Okay, so the overview of this question is that there is a list of characteristics, of traits, of things that a product or service needs to be, that they need to fulfill. And the theory says if your product or service can tick all these boxes, can fulfill all these characteristics, then your idea is most likely to be successful. In other words, it has the characteristics of being a successful product or service. Okay, so your job for this first question for 5 marks is to list those characteristics of what a product or what a successful product is going to be, and say whether your product or service actually meets that criteria or not. Okay, so I've given you a page number. You'll see in the textbook. In the textbook there on page 83 and 85, remember we are working from Entrepreneurship and New Venture Management by Van Aert and Besadenhout. On page 83, you'll see it lists the characteristics of a good product and a service. So you're going to literally write out and explain those characteristics and identify whether your product meets those characteristics or not. So let's take, for example, one of the first characteristics would be a successful product should fulfill a need. So that's the characteristic of the product or the service. So then you would say the very first topic of a successful product would be for it to fulfill a need. The product that I sell is a pair of scissors, and therefore it meets the need to protect myself or as self-defense or whatever. So I'm saying, yes, my product meets that need. So the idea behind this is that your product or service should ultimately tick all those boxes. If for some reason your product or service does not tick all those boxes, please don't panic about it. Then you just need to be honest and say, this product or service must render an income. So that's one of the characteristics. My product is based on something that is not going to make an income. So maybe this is not such a good idea at the end. Remember, we are doing a feasibility study. So the idea here is to try and say, yes, this is going to be a good idea. It is a good product or service or not. So try be as honest as possible in your evaluation of your product or idea. Okay, so for 5 marks, it's quite a lot of writing for very little marks, but try and be as detailed as possible when you are describing those characteristics. Okay, please, guys, at any time you've got a question, please stop me or send an email if you are listening to the recording. The second little question that we have there is a short and sweet question. What you have to do here is explain the type of a business ownership that your business would be most suited to. Okay, so you can hear that you might have different opinions on this. You pick the one that your business would most likely enter to. So we know different types of ownerships. We get sole proprietors or sole traders, we get partnerships, we get private companies, public companies, we get let's try and think of other ones that we have, non-profit organizations, we have cooperatives, which you don't really set up anymore, but yeah, we've got other trusts that we would try and set up. So you've got a wide range of ownerships that you could choose from. Like I said, sole trader, partnership, companies, not-for-profits, trust that you could go and set up. What you need to do is pick one of them that you would identify with for your business. So let's say, for example, if we just go for the first example, you think that your business idea would be best suited for a sole proprietor or a sole trader, and you would say a definition of what a sole proprietorship is. So you would say the business ownership that I have chosen would be sole proprietorship. This is evident that there would only be one business owner. This person would put in all the capital, but would also get all the capital, and they would have full legal responsibility for it. I chose this because I would be the only person in the business. It's a small venture, and I don't need any other partners or whatever it may be. No problem, Alsna, not a problem at all. I was wondering what happened to you, but that's okay. Welcome back. And please do ask if there are any questions. So we were just going through question 2, just saying this part of the task is quite simple. The only thing you need to be doing here is to explain the type of business. So I don't need an essay to explain. 1 or 2 short sentences to explain the type of ownership is more than sufficient. And if you wanted to add 1 sentence just to justify why you chose that. The reason why I say that, it's not necessarily going to give you extra marks, but it's also just for my reference to see what was your thinking behind what you said for this. So it's just good for me to go and see, okay, I said I'm going to be a sole trader, and what are the reasons for that? So maybe you chose partnership, explain what a partnership is. So say the form of ownership that I have chosen for my business would be a partnership. A partnership is defined as when there are between 2 or 20 people that have signed a contract in the business. They all contribute and benefit from the organization. My business would be best suited for this because I really have a partner, or I need extra capital, or I need extra advice, maybe different skills that you would need. So again, you can see I've had two very short little definitions of what the type of ownership is and one example of why I actually chose it. So it's only for 2 marks. So again, quite a big question. So I would say 3 sentences would be more than enough for this question. 2 sentences would define, so theory, define the type of business, explain it, and then the other part of the application, just 1 sentence to say why you say what you said. Why did you choose that particular form of ownership? Okay. Then we move on to the second last question that you would see here. This is when you are going to describe 5 resources for the business. So any 5 resources that your business would need. Now, in our textbook on page 134, they give us the resources that are needed. Okay, so they give us a few types of resources that are needed, but you are going to have to do some external research as well. Remember, this is specific for your business. Okay, so obviously you might need specialized equipment. If you are putting in solar panels, you might need a special type of skill set to in order to do that. You might need special raw materials. If you are going into the education and sort of upskilling people, again, what facilities do you need in order to progress with that idea? So obviously identify and explain 5 resources. Keep the definition short and sweet. Remember, it is for 5 marks. So you would have to say which 5 ones and say what would you need it for. So let's look at an example here. So say now we say the first resource that my business would be in the form of human resources. I would need people to operate or to manufacture, or I need people who are directly going to literally put the product together or produce the product, or I need a specialized skill set because we're working with high-tech applications and computer programs and things like that. So I would need human resources. I would need skilled labor in order to write those programs for the computer or develop the apps or whatever it may be. Okay, and then you go on to the next one. I need financial resources, I need money, I need capital in order to buy equipment, or I need financial resources in the beginning because I need to hire land or buy the fleet of vehicles that you need. So a brief description of what the resource is, but also I need those practical examples as to what type of resources would be specific for your business. So I hope that also makes a little bit more sense then as well for 5 marks. And then for the final 18 marks, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to do what we refer to as an external environmental analysis. So an external analysis looking at what happens outside of the business, so a full-on external analysis. Remember, we always use the PESTLE or the PESTI acronym here. So again, you're going to apply it to your business. Okay, so we've got the definitions, which you will go and explain. So let's say the first P is physical environment. So briefly define what is the physical environment. So then you would say the physical environment is characteristic of nature, what happens in nature, what other things could be part of that. I'm trying to think of a definition without giving away the definition that you would have there. But yeah, physical environment would be part of, you know, what happens in nature, the physical environment. Do you need raw materials that are like trees, water supply, things that could affect you could be the fact if you have a wind farm that there's no wind. Okay, so that type of factor would be a physical environment factor that you could use. So define physical factor and then give the examples for it as well. Economic factors, technological factors, cultural factors. So you're going to include all of those in your analysis. Okay, remember, you don't have to go into too much detail about each sort of one of them, as long as you have a definition. So technically the mark allocation for here would be 1 mark allocated for defining, and then the 2 marks for the application. There are 6 factors, so you've got 6 different factors here, and each factor would be 3 marks, which would give you the total then of 18. So 1 mark to describe it. So say one of the factors in a PESTEL study is the T for technology. This is characteristic of X, Y, and Z. So you define what the technological environment is and say, these are the examples that I would be using or that I would have to analyze as part of my external environment. Okay, so what technological developments would have an impact on your product, on your service? How would it revolutionize your business? What other technological development could be opportunities for you to embrace? What technological advancements would be threats that you need to be aware of? So of those, you would need 2 sort of examples that would be applicable to your idea that you have. So I've put in a little document there that you can go and read as well. But a PESTEL analysis, 6 items or 6 factors that are all part of the external environment. So please remember, guys, don't give me things that are part of the internal. So don't go and speak about the policies or the employees, because those are within the business. Remember, we are focusing on the external environment. We are looking at the macro factors. We are looking at the factors that we cannot control. Economic factors, when price of petrol increases, we have got no control over that, yet it does have an impact on our business. So those are the factors that we are again looking for that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, really wraps up this last task, task 2. The 30 marks of that would be part of these 4 questions, like I mentioned. So yeah, I've just taken out some other factors, but we've already discussed them in detail, so I'm not going to go through. You can just read through them when you are. This breakdown, but by the way, I have loaded in your more resources folder for you, so you do have access to the slide as well, so you can go and download it from the more resources folder. It's labeled part 2 guidelines, so all the guidelines, part 1, which we finished with, part 2, part 3, and the final POE, they're all in your more resources folder, so you are welcome to go and use them. And this is just the note then for you of what you should be focusing on here. Remember to submit it. It's due the 5th of, I did say the 5th of October, yes. Let's just quickly just double check that in. Yeah, 5th of October, it's due the 5th of October. Remember, 9 o'clock has got to be in before 9 p.m. in the evening. Remember to reference, so you can see a lot of this work was also theory. You needed those definitions, you needed those explanations. Where did you find those definitions and explanations from? So please go and reference that work. Obviously, your own idea, that you have used, that's your own idea. But any other theory, definitions, listings, explanations, those would all be referenced. They would all have to be referenced. And then remember, you would also have the reference list at the end. So just to reiterate, remember, referencing is super duper important as always. It's going to go through Safe Assign, and remember to edit. So remember, it must look professional, it must look neat. It is part of your bigger POE picture that you would have at the end of the day as well. So that really is all from my side in a record 20 minutes, one of the shortest recordings. But I hope that it was valuable. I hope that you did learn something, and I hope it does make sense and sort of give you a little bit of a help when you are progressing with part 2. Please, at any stage, do let me know as well how I can help. We will also have another Q&A session closer to the time. Hopefully that one will not clash with any of the other classes. I will always try and make sure that they don't, but somehow there's always a clash. But so also, if you've got your other class, you're welcome to attend that as well. And shout it if you have